couldn't actually see the hangar from here, but you just saw a huge black plume of smoke. And we knew, something really bad is here.
In the adjacent building, sales director David Isola hears the explosion.
Well, I was sitting at my desk and I heard this loud boom, and one of the guys came in from next door and said that he just saw an airplane crash, and so I hopped in my truck and drove down to the site.
From 60 meters away, Isola records the opening moments of the tragedy.
There was a lot of smoke, and it was just like hell. It looked just like hell. The flames were coming over the fence, just total craziness. Everybody was just running for their life.
Chief Rogers immediately takes command of the scene. He knows that there are aircraft parked inside the flaming hangar. Their fuel tanks threaten to blow.
And our concern was, one, about the people that were on board the aircraft, two, for the people that were working in the hangar, and three, we had to worry about the airplanes that were in for repair. Were those aircraft on fire? So we had a lot of major issues to deal with.
Within minutes, firefighters begin to get the inferno under control. The hope now is that somewhere inside the wreck, survivors are clinging to life.
The main thing probably was on anybody's mind once we realized what we had was survivors.
Chief Rogers sends a line of firefighters led by Cindy Overcash into the heart of the inferno. Cindy Overcash and two of her team make their way into the wreckage, carefully putting out spot fires along the way.
As we walk up on the seat of the fire and we see what we think are crash test dummies, we thought a plane had blown up inside and blew their training dummies out. And then it dawned on me, that's not a training dummy.
It took them a few minutes to determine exactly what was happening, and once they did that, it was obvious that there were no survivors.
It's a total loss. All 19 passengers, as well as Captain Leslie and First Officer Gibbs, are dead.
At about 8:53 this morning, we had an aircraft accident. We had 19 passengers and 2 crew. There are no survivors.
And we hope that we never have to respond to a situation with such a large loss of life, but that is our job. This is some of the most difficult duty and tasks that a firefighter will ever do in their career.
For medics and rescue workers, the ordeal is over. But for friends and family of the victims, the anguish has just begun.
I was walking through the living room, and I stopped and said, my heart's beating right now just the way it was then. I said, has Christiana called yet? She said, no. Okay, and I knew then what had happened. I knew. So I went and got the telephone and called the school. He said, yes, Mrs. Shepard, we have some sad news. And he told me that the plane had crashed on takeoff. I asked if there were any survivors. He said no. So then I knew I had to go tell Doug, and he was in the garage.
Yeah, it's something you never forget about. I was changing a fluorescent bulb, and Teresa came to the doorway.
How do you say that? You use words every single day. How can you use words to ruin someone's life? But I told him, I said, Doug, Christiana's plane crashed.
at that moment, my world fell apart.
Now the shepherds and the families of the other 20 victims want to know what caused the deaths of their loved ones. It's been almost 5 hours since Flight 5481 crashed into a hangar in Charlotte, North Carolina. With no survivors to rescue, neither bodies nor airplane parts are moved from where they fell until the arrival of investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board. While medical examiners mark the location of human remains in red, NTSB investigators mark scraps of metal in yellow, looking for clues to help them figure out what happened aboard Flight 5481. Among those assigned to this case, lead investigator Lorinda Ward. This is her first assignment as the lead investigator of a crash. But today, she's not feeling her best.
That day, I was a little bit under the weather. I was fighting off a cold. You have the adrenaline that shoots through your body at the time, and so that actually makes up for when you're not feeling well. And I knew that the other people on my team were experienced, so I felt comfortable going to Charlotte.
At Charlotte Douglas Airport, Ward takes the first steps towards solving this accident.
I checked in with the fire department to make sure that the fires had been put out, and then called a meeting with all the first responders to see what they had noticed when they came to the crash site.
Ward acts fast. Because there are bodies entangled with the wreckage, she declares the crash site a potential biohazard. Investigators who might come in contact with the wreckage must wear protective suits while they examine the wreck and identify the victims' remains.
When we arrived on scene, the accident site did not look like an airplane was there. Due to the fire, the post-crash fire, when you initially walked up to it, it was hard to identify that you had an airplane that could hold 21 people.
While work continues at the crash site,
All right, let's go.
Lorinda Ward and her team look for clues nearby.
We had the folks go shoulder to shoulder on the runway that the accident crew took off on to pick up anything that they saw on the runway to see if it had any relevance to the accident investigation.
Runways must be clear of all debris. The smallest object can become a deadly projectile if it strikes a plane on takeoff. 3 years earlier, a Concorde jet ran over a 40-centimeter strip of scrap metal on a Paris runway. The plane's fuel tank was pierced and caught fire. The aircraft rose to 200 meters before it crashed into a nearby hotel. 109 people on board and 4 people on the ground were killed. At Charlotte Douglas International, investigators scour the area. They find a fuel cap lying dangerously close to the runway.
There we are. It could be sucked in and it could damage an engine. The main part would be the damage that it could do to an engine.
The discovery raises an interesting possibility. As Flight 5481 raced down the runway at takeoff, the fuel cap bounced up off the tarmac, struck the engine rotors, and brought Captain Leslie's aircraft crashing to Earth.
This was to be brought back to see if it had any relevance to the accident investigation, whether it came off the airplane itself or if it could have done some type of damage to the airplane.
A closer examination leads Ward and her team to conclude that the fuel cap could not have interfered with the propellers. Investigators discover no other relevant debris on the runway. The runway debris theory is ruled out.